Hey everyone, it's Sean. In the previous video, I walked you through how to use color books, how to import tints and shades of colors into your swatches panel, and how to sort of go about creating harmonious gradients that are vibrant, don't have a lot of color banding, or messy gray areas inside of them. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to apply some more stylistic changes to gradients and actually create something that might be a little bit more abstract and kind of cool. So to start, let's sort of just jump right in. I have our previous shape that we worked on, and I'm just going to pull off a bunch of these colors because I don't really need them. And we're left again with our two complementary colors. I'm just going to click on them, and I'm going to use probably some monochromatic stuff here. Let's maybe go with, just trying to think of what's going to look really cool. Yeah, we can do that. So just choose two colors, maybe one that's a little bit darker, one that's a little bit lighter. And actually, you know what I want to do? I'm going to come up to our swatches up here, and I'm just going to choose these two darker ones, and I'm going to add them to a swatch group. And I'm going to come up and I'm going to click and drag and add them into our monochromatic group. And I'm going to delete the extra one that it created. I'm going to jump back over to our gradients, and I'm going to make a really dark one followed by a slightly darker one. So there we go. We have our sort of background here. And the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a ellipse. I'm going to use a circle, and I'm going to draw it out nice and big. I'm going to use our align tools to put it right in the center. And now we can sort of look at the gradient tool in use with a circle. So you can see that if you change the angle here, we could probably move it and extend it out a little bit. Come on. There we go. So we're getting something already that looks pretty cool and very subtle, but has a really nice effect to it. What I might do is actually add in an extra color to the background here. Maybe not something so bright. I wonder what our original... Yeah, something like that might look nice. We can drag this out into the middle. Can adjust, whoops. We can adjust the midpoint here. That looks pretty nifty, doesn't it? So this is kind of interesting. You could sort of just leave it like this if you wanted to, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how to apply multiple gradient fills on a singular object for sort of the most high impact solution that you could go for. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on this circle that we just created, and we're going to go up to our appearance panel. And I'm not sure how much practice you guys have in here. We'll be looking at a lot of stuff to do with this panel because it's extremely powerful, and we'll be looking at it over the course of our sort of tutorial. But right now, or over the course of our course, I should say. Right now, you can see we have one fill, and it's set to gradient, and that's the gradient that we have. Now, if we wanted to add another fill, down here you can see in the middle there is a new fill layer option. I'm going to turn off the one on top, and I'm going to go to the one on bottom, and we're going to go back to the gradient window. In this case, what I want to do is I want to click on the one on the right hand side. I want to change its opacity to 0. And instead of this being a linear gradient on a radial shape, I want it to be a radial gradient on a radial shape. And I want to adjust the midpoint of this gradient here. And instead of it being dark, yeah, we'll leave it dark for now, actually. Yeah, that should be fine. So now we have a sort of floating semi-transparent orb in the middle of our document, and it doesn't look super exciting. If we click on our shape again and we go to our appearance panel, we can go to our fill that we turned off. And the cool thing about the appearance panel, it allows you to adjust the stack, the order of how certain effects are being applied. So you can tell that by dragging the initial fill, by dragging the initial fill from on top where it was fully opaque, it was overtaking everything underneath it, to underneath, you get a really cool sort of effect happening already. What I would like to do though, change this from a gradient. I sort of want it to be like a soft, pale sort of color. And if you're anything like me, I always forget to select things properly. And none of my changes tend to take effect the first time. So just make sure you always have your objects selected. And now we have something that looks, a lot more maybe mystical, like a floating energy orb or something like that in the center. And the cool thing is you can keep on stacking these semi-transparent gradients on top of one another. So to create a new fill, you can either go to this Add New Fill button, or having a fill selected, like our semi-transparent gradient here, you can hit this plus, and it will duplicate the selected item. And now we have another fill color that we can work with. What I want to do is quickly go up to our color guide, and I'd like to select a different color, to be honest. I'm not super thrilled with this purple for what it is I'm trying to do, but I don't see one in the color guide that I like. So I am just going to go up to our color window here, and I'm going to select maybe a magenta this time. Any magenta will do, maybe something like that. That kind of looks nice. We can go into our gradient window, and you can see it's sort of taken on the magenta-y color that we chose. But now we're layering stuff just on top of each other in the same position, and it's not really giving us the effect that I'd like. So what we can do is we can actually reposition our gradient slider by pulling it up. We can increase the overall diameter of it by grabbing this outer ring and scaling it up here. And we can sort of just keep on repositioning it until it's a slightly different position. I'm kind of cool with that. Wonderful. And we can just make some tinier, smaller adjustments. The other thing too that I'd like to point out is when we have this color up here, even though it says 0, the closer you get to it, the more of that color it's actually going to take on. So just one thing to be aware of when you're building transparent gradients is what color you do have at the end of this whole thing. Ideally, you would have the exact same color from one end to the next, and you would just have it set to 0. That way you're not getting into any gross sort of muddy transparencies or anything like that. So I kind of like the placement of this guy now. What I can do is I can go back into our appearance panel. I can select the whole ellipse shape. I can grab our first semi-transparent fill, and I can sort of start to adjust, sort of fine-tuning these things here. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of keep creating extra little fills and just playing along with what I'd like to see happen. So go back up to our gradient menu and select a new color swatch. Maybe something in the mid this time. Or maybe a really saturated, the original blue color that we have. I'm going to use my gradient tool by pressing G on the keyboard. And I'm going to sort of drag it out and pull it on down. There we go. And we're sort of just getting this really cool shaded sphere, right? There we go. So we can already see that has a lot more dynamic sort of color to it than if we were just trying to create singular gradients on a standard plane. I'm actually just going to make sure that I have this duplicated and set to 0. That way the color properly holds. And what I think I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch this. So I'm going to put the really saturated one over here. I'm going to move back down to my appearance. I'm going to have the whole shape selected by pressing V. Click on our fill with the first dark colored gradient, and I'm going to move it down to the bottom. I think I'm going to increase the size of it, and I'm going to bring it up a little bit. I'm going to go back to our whole shape by pressing V again. Click on our newest gradient, and I'm just going to kind of keep moving it to a slightly different position. There we go. Whoops. Sorry, I'm grabbing the rotate section and it's kind of freaking out a little bit. Okay. Cool. Maybe move it off to the side a little bit more. We could also change that from the blue color to maybe something a little bit lighter. It's all about playing around, seeing what you guys like best, what works best for your design, and what you really want to sort of focus on. There we go. I'm going to bring that back. Probably something like there, just to give it a little bit of a shine mark. That's kind of cool. There we go. That's not really the greatest looking thing. You can also pull it directly off of the shape. You don't have to have it sitting on the shape. That's kind of the cool thing about the gradient tool, as well as just the level of control that it actually gives you. There, I like that a lot more. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you use the appearance panel to create multiple different styles of gradients, place them on top of one another, and sort of start creating this really cool abstract piece of design work. If you wanted, you could actually use your type tool and start putting in some really cool type effects. I'm just going to use Futura for now with Futura Medium. I'm going to have my colors set to white. And, you know, maybe you wanted this to be the title for something. Don't mind me, I'm just getting all Twilight, calling it Eclipse. I'm going to increase the size, and I'm just going to track it out. A lot. Dramatically so. There we go. And just switch it. There we go. We can use our align tool, make sure it's aligned to the artboard, and just sort of nicely center the whole thing. Same with this guy here, just make sure it's nice and sort of center. And there you have it. So that is multiple gradients on top of each other within an object to help sort of create a stylistically cool full gradient poster within Illustrator. Just sort of a nice intro to how to actually use gradients properly, responsibly, and with the best colors possible. I hope you guys found that helpful. I'll catch you guys in the next video. See ya.